I, 26F, was invited to an elegant family Christmas dinner at a luxury hotel in New York. I arrived wearing a stunning designer dress worth $30,000 that I had worked very hard to afford. The moment I walked into the dining hall, my older sister stared at me with shock and jealousy. My assigned seat was right next to hers. As soon as I sat down, she deliberately threw a cup of hot coffee all over my expensive dress. I stood up in shock and asked, "What is wrong with you?" She angrily replied, "Who do you think you are? You don't belong sitting next to me." For a few seconds, the entire room went completely silent. I could feel the hot coffee soaking through the front of my dress. The dark stains spread across the fabric almost immediately. People at nearby tables turned to look. A waiter froze halfway through pouring wine at another table. My hands were shaking. I wasn't even thinking about the money yet. I was trying to understand what had just happened. "Claire," I said, still staring at my sister, "did you seriously just throw coffee on me?" She leaned back in her chair like she'd done absolutely nothing wrong. I slipped. "No, you didn't. It was an accident. You looked me in the eyes before you did it." She shrugged. "I guess your expensive dress distracted me." I couldn't believe it. Claire had always been dramatic, competitive, attention-seeking. But this? This was something else. My mom stood up first. "Oh my goodness!" She grabbed a stack of napkins from the table. "Honey, let me help." I took a step back. "It's fine." It wasn't fine. Nothing about this was fine. Dad looked at Claire. "What happened?" Claire answered before I could. "She overreacted." I actually laughed. "You dumped an entire cup of coffee on me." I said it slipped. "You literally told me I don't belong sitting next to you." Claire crossed her arms. "Because you don't." The room became quiet again. My uncle, David, frowned. "What does that even mean?" Claire looked around the table. "Seriously?" Nobody answered. She pointed toward me. "Look at her." Everyone did. "The dress." She almost spit the word out. "The jewelry. The shoes." She looked back at me. "Who exactly are you trying to impress?" I blinked. "My family?" She laughed. "No." She leaned forward. "You're trying to make everyone else feel small." I stared at her. "I bought this dress because I wanted to wear it." "To Christmas dinner?" "Yes." She shook her head. "You're unbelievable." At that point, one of the hotel staff hurried over. "Ma'am, are you all right?" I smiled politely. "I'm okay. Would you like us to help clean the dress?" I looked down. The damage was obvious. Coffee had soaked into the front panel, one sleeve, and part of the skirt. I knew enough about delicate fabrics to realize this wasn't something that would wipe away with napkins. "It's all right," I said quietly. "I'll take care of it." The staff member nodded sympathetically before walking away. Dad looked frustrated. "Claire, what?" "You owe your sister an apology." Claire rolled her eyes. "For spilling coffee? For behaving like this?" She sighed dramatically. "Fine." She turned toward me. "I'm sorry." She paused. "That you're so obsessed with showing off." My jaw actually dropped. "That's your apology?" She smiled. "It's the best you're getting." Mom rubbed her temples. "Please. It's Christmas Eve." I couldn't help myself. "So, because it's Christmas Eve, I'm just supposed to pretend this didn't happen?" Mom looked uncomfortable. "I'm saying let's not ruin the evening." I stared at her. My evening was ruined the second coffee hit my dress. Nobody spoke. My grandmother, Evelyn, quietly set down her fork. "Claire." Her voice wasn't loud. But everyone listened. "Look at your sister." Claire didn't. I said look at her. Reluctantly, Claire turned toward me. Grandma continued. "Does she look happy to you?" Claire stayed silent. "Then why are you?" Claire immediately answered. "I'm not." Grandma raised an eyebrow. "No?" Claire looked away. "No." The conversation stopped for a moment as another waiter brought fresh coffee for the table. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. I excused myself. I'm going to the restroom. Mom started to stand. I'll come with you. I'd rather be alone. She nodded. I walked out of the ballroom as calmly as I could. The second I reached the restroom, I locked myself inside one of the larger stalls and finally let myself cry. Not because the dress was expensive, although that hurt. I'd spent almost 2 years saving for it. I work in luxury fashion consulting. I don't come from family money. Nobody bought me designer clothes. Nobody handed me a trust fund. I worked overtime, skipped vacations, passed on buying smaller luxury items, because I wanted one timeless piece I'd always remember. When I finally bought that dress, it felt like proof that I'd accomplished something on my own. Claire knew that. She knew exactly how hard I'd worked, which made this hurt even more. About 5 minutes later, someone knocked gently. Lena? It was Grandma. You in there? I unlocked the stall. She looked at me for a long moment. Oh, sweetheart. She hugged me. I hadn't realized how badly I needed that. She stepped back and gently looked at the dress. That's unfortunate. I laughed through my tears. That's one way to put it. She smiled sadly. You know what bothers me most? What? The dress isn't the problem. I nodded. I know. It's the look Claire had before she did it. I looked at her. You noticed? I'm 81. She smiled. I'm old, not blind. That almost made me laugh. Almost. She reached into her purse and handed me a clean handkerchief. Dry your eyes. I don't want to go back in there. I know. But don't let someone else's bitterness send you home. Before I could answer, another knock came at the restroom door. Lena? This time it was Mom. Can I come in? Grandma looked at me. I nodded. Mom stepped inside. She looked exhausted. I'm sorry. I stayed quiet. I know Claire crossed the line. Then why does it feel like everyone's trying to move on instead of holding her accountable? Mom didn't answer immediately. Finally she sighed. Because this family has a habit of avoiding conflict. I gave her a tired smile. I've noticed. She looked ashamed. I don't want Christmas ruined. It already is. Another silence. Then Grandma quietly said, maybe Christmas was ruined long before tonight. Mom looked at her. What does that mean? Grandma simply shook her head. Nothing. But the way she said it made me wonder. When we returned to the dining room, everyone suddenly became very interested in their food. Nobody wanted eye contact. Claire was scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. I sat down again. Not beside her. I pulled a chair from another table and placed it farther down. Claire noticed immediately. Oh. She smirked. So, now you're too good to sit next to me? I ignored her. Dinner continued awkwardly. Conversations started. Stopped. Started again. Eventually, Uncle David tried changing the subject. So, Lena, how's work? I appreciated the effort. It's been busy. I heard you got promoted. I did. Congratulations. Thank you. Before anyone else could speak, Claire interrupted. That explains the dress. Dad sighed. Claire, what? You just can't help yourself. She shrugged. I'm making conversation. No. Grandma said quietly. You're making comparisons. Claire laughed. Same thing. No. Grandma looked directly at her. It isn't. For the first time that evening, Claire looked slightly uncomfortable. Dinner finally ended about an hour later. I was ready to leave. I'd already decided I wasn't staying for dessert. As everyone stood, the hotel manager approached our table. Excuse me. We all looked over. He smiled politely at me. Miss Carter? Yes? I'm very sorry about what happened. Thank you. Our staff reviewed the incident because another guest reported it. I frowned. Reviewed it? Yes. Claire suddenly stopped putting on her coat. The manager continued. We wanted to determine whether we should offer assistance. I nodded politely. I appreciate that. He hesitated. After reviewing the security footage, Claire immediately interrupted. Why would you review security footage? The manager looked surprised, because a guest reported that the spill appeared intentional. The room went completely still. Claire forced a laugh. That's ridiculous. The manager remained professional. Our cameras captured the entire interaction. Nobody spoke. Dad slowly looked at Claire. Mom looked between the two of them. Grandma didn't say a word. She simply watched. The manager turned back to me. If you'd like, we can provide you with a copy for insurance purposes. Insurance? I hadn't even thought about that. Before I could answer, Claire spoke again. Delete it. Every head turned toward her. What? Dad asked. It's private. The manager politely shook his head. I'm sorry, ma'am. Hotel security footage is retained according to company policy. Claire's face lost all color. I noticed something then. For the first time all night. She looked scared. Not embarrassed. Not angry. Scared. Dad looked at her carefully. Claire. She didn't answer. He took one slow step toward her. Was it an accident? She swallowed. Nobody moved. Nobody even reached for their coats. The manager quietly stepped back, clearly realizing this had become a family matter. Claire looked around the room. At Mom. At Dad. At me. Finally, she whispered. You don't understand. Grandma's expression changed instantly. What don't we understand? Claire's eyes filled with tears. She looked at me. Then she looked at the hotel manager. And in a voice barely above a whisper she said. Claire's words hung in the air. If she gets that footage, everything I've been hiding for the last 2 years is going to come out. Nobody spoke. Even the hotel manager looked uncomfortable. Dad frowned. What are you talking about? Claire immediately shook her head. Nothing. You just said you've been hiding something. I didn't mean it. Grandma Evelyn stepped forward. Oh, I think you did. The manager cleared his throat. I apologize if I've interrupted a private matter. I looked at him. You didn't. He nodded politely. If you decide you'd like a copy of the footage, please contact me. We'll preserve it. He handed me a business card before quietly walking away. The second he was gone, every eye turned back to Claire. Dad folded his arms. Start talking? Claire looked trapped. It doesn't matter. It clearly does. Mom's voice was much softer. Claire, what have you been hiding? She started shaking her head. I can't. You can. No. I had been silent the entire time. Not because I didn't have anything to say. Because I suddenly realized this wasn't about my dress anymore. Whatever Claire was afraid of had started long before tonight. I looked at her. What does the security footage have to do with something from 2 years ago? She looked at me, then quickly looked away. It proves something. What? That? She couldn't finish. Dad's patience finally ran out. Enough. His voice echoed through the nearly empty ballroom. We're going home. Nobody talked during the drive. Normally, Christmas music would be playing. Dad always insisted on it. That night, the radio stayed off. When we got to my parents' house, everyone gathered in the living room. The same room where we'd opened presents every Christmas morning since I was a kid. Now it felt like a courtroom. Dad remained standing. Claire? She stayed seated. Tell us the truth. She stared at the floor. I don't know where to start. Mom sat beside her. Start with why you hated seeing your sister wear that dress. Claire laughed bitterly. I didn't hate the dress. She finally looked at me. I hated what it represented. I frowned. What did it represent? You. That didn't answer anything. She continued. Everything always worked out for you. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Claire. No. She wiped away tears. You don't get to interrupt. I stayed quiet. You always worked hard. She nodded. You got scholarships. Another nod. You built your career. She looked around the room. And everyone kept talking about how proud they were. Dad frowned. We're proud of both of you." She smiled sadly. "Were you?" Nobody answered immediately. Claire looked at me. "Do you know what people asked me at every family gathering for the last 2 years?" I shook my head. "They asked how my little sister became so successful." Her voice cracked. "They asked why I wasn't doing as well." The room became quiet. I smiled. She looked down. "I congratulated you." She laughed through tears. "Then I'd go home and cry." I felt some of my anger soften. Not disappear. Just soften. Being insecure explained jealousy. It didn't explain what she'd done. "So, you ruined my dress?" She nodded once. "I wanted one night where you weren't the center of attention." Mom looked horrified. "Claire." "Shh. I know." She covered her face. "I know how awful that sounds." Dad sat down slowly. "I don't recognize this." Claire looked at him. "Because none of you noticed." "What do you mean?" She took a deep breath. "I lost my job 2 years ago." Mom blinked. "What?" "I never found another one." The room went still. "You told us you were still working." "I lied." Dad stared at her. "Every morning, I'd leave the apartment." She nodded. "I'd sit in coffee shops applying for jobs." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because Emma was succeeding." She looked at me again. I felt like a failure. I quietly asked, "So, instead of asking for help?" She nodded. "You pretended everything was fine." "Yes." "And blamed me." More tears. "Yes." I leaned back in my chair. For the first time all night, I stopped asking myself why she'd done it. I understood why. I just couldn't understand why she'd chosen to hurt me, instead of trusting us. Then, something occurred to me. I looked at her carefully. "What did you mean when you said the footage would expose everything?" She looked embarrassed. "The footage proves I threw the coffee on purpose." I frowned. "Yes. I've spent 2 years convincing everyone that nothing bad I do is intentional." The room fell silent again. She looked at our parents. I always had an excuse. It was stress. I was tired. I misunderstood. I didn't mean it. She shook her head. "But tonight." She looked at me. "I looked straight at you before I did it." She closed her eyes. "I can't lie my way out of that." Grandma finally spoke. "No." She leaned forward. "You can't." Christmas morning didn't look anything like previous years. Nobody rushed to open presents. Nobody made pancakes. Nobody took family pictures. Instead, Claire knocked on my bedroom door. "Can we talk?" I hesitated before opening it. She looked exhausted. "I don't expect forgiveness." "Okay." I just wanted to apologize without everyone else around. I crossed my arms. "I'm listening." She took a deep breath. "When you bought that dress." I nodded. I remembered something. "What?" "When we were kids." I frowned. "You always talked about owning one beautiful designer dress someday." I smiled faintly. "I did." "You actually did it." She looked down. "And I realized I'd stopped chasing my own goals years ago." She looked back at me. "I blamed you because it hurt less than blaming myself." There it was. The truth. Not that I had somehow ruined her life. That seeing me succeed forced her to face the parts of her own life she'd been avoiding. "I'm sorry." She looked at my dress, hanging inside the garment bag. "I know I'll never be able to replace what I ruined." I glanced over. "Actually?" "Chen." She looked confused. "I called the designer's care department this morning." "They can save it?" "Maybe." I smiled. "They think the stain can probably be removed." For the first time since the dinner, she smiled. A tiny one. "I'm glad." I looked at her. "But even if they couldn't." She nodded. "The dress was never the hardest thing to replace." "What was?" "Trust." Her smile disappeared. "I know. Over the next several months, things changed. Not overnight. Real life isn't like that." Claire admitted she needed help. She started therapy, not because our parents forced her, because she finally admitted she'd built her entire identity around comparing herself to other people. Dad apologized to me, more than once. I should have stepped in sooner. Mom apologized too. I kept thinking she'd grow out of it. Grandma simply hugged both of us. I've waited years for honesty. As for the security footage, I did request a copy, not because I wanted revenge, because my insurance company required documentation before approving the restoration claim. The hotel also insisted on paying for the professional cleaning, because they believed no guest should leave without support after an incident like that. A month later, I got the dress back. Perfect. You couldn't tell coffee had ever touched it. Funny enough, I almost never wear it now. Not because it reminds me of what happened, because it reminds me of what I learned. Success isn't what makes people resent you. Unhealed pain does. A few months after everything happened, Claire invited me to lunch. No family, just us. Halfway through the meal, she slid a small box across the table. Inside was a simple, silver bracelet. Nothing flashy, nothing expensive. I know it doesn't compare to your dress. It doesn't have to. She smiled. I wanted to buy you something with the first paycheck from my new job. I looked up. You got hired? She nodded proudly. I did. Congratulations. She laughed. See? What? You've always celebrated me. I smiled. I was never competing with you. I know. She looked out the window. I was competing with a version of you that only existed in my own head. That sentence stayed with me. Sometimes the biggest battles people fight aren't against us at all. They're against the stories they've convinced themselves are true. This Christmas ended nothing like I imagined. It started with humiliation. It ended with honesty. Our family isn't perfect now. Probably never will be. But we're finally having real conversations instead of pretending everything is fine. And honestly, that's worth more than any designer dress. So, was I wrong for refusing to pretend it was just an accident? Or would you have handled it differently?